we'll launch into a demonstration of the solution. And then once we've done that, we'll open up the floor to questions. So I should be able to access my BPC environment, and having just jumped back, we see my system's timed out, so I'll just re-authenticate allowing me to access it. We see here the absolute default homepage, the login page from a BPC installation. So any existing users will see something that is either similar to or the same as the version they've got. And that includes all of the functionality. Obviously, I'm an administrator, so I do see all of the options. An individual user may not see everything because they don't have access to that. But we should see here something that to many people on the call is very familiar. And within this, I am a business process flow in which we've got a number of activities defined. So we can see that there's actually an already completed process there to do a mass upload of our source data. So we include a process that allows us to get our existing book of leases into the system as a process, and we tested that in POC environments. Significantly over 1,000 leases, and we've got customers with several thousand leases using the system now. So the solution is designed to support getting that information into the system, and as long as our data is available, we're literally talking about a few days to get that going from start to conclusion. But we're going to talk today about how we use the system once it's up and running, and looking at the calculations and looking at the outputs we generate, and looking at the ability then to disclose in our own reporting packs. So I've drilled straight into an activity, and I see I've got a number of processes in here with some potentially administrator over only activity. So for instance, update of my lease parameters, which may incorporate which incorporates our discount rate, our centrally set finance rates, and also our asset class depreciation rates. And those things are set centrally. We obviously, if we're going to support our users, like often the users aren't going to understand things like how to calculate a discount rate for the organization, and therefore we provide that information for them. And additionally, under the standard, we potentially required to optionally determine the depreciation rate from the asset class, if, for instance, there's an option to buy the asset that we're going to execute, or alternatively from the lease life, if we're simply going to lease the asset and hand it back at the end of the lease. But we see here our very first schedule that we'll look at today, which is our lease setup, and I'll just refresh that, which allows me to initiate it for all the validations that we're going to, because what we're going to do is actually enable here a master data process that gives us an ability to create the master data and initialize that master data based on an input via an Excel template. Now, this template has quite a lot running over to the sides here, multiple fields that we're gathering, some of which are mandatory and some of which are optional. So I'll start. I'll start on the mandatory information. So we do need to give the lease a description. So so we'll make the machine lease for the webinar. This lease might be initiated today. It's currently 20th of September. September, so 2018. We know it's all of our users obviously are always going to be absolutely on the ball. So as soon as we've signed a lease, we're going to get it into the system. So that lease has been signed today. We put it in the system, and we'll make it a two-year lease. So it's going to terminate on the 19th of September 2020. And we see as we do that, we've cleared an orange highlight on those cells because having started the lease, we're doing some validation already that says, have we got information that is acceptable and is complete for the use in the system? And I can see it's still not complete because a valid question is saying no at the moment, and we can still see there's some orange cells to come. So I'm going to make this lease a monthly lease. We could have had annual or quarterly. They are distinctions that allow us actually the flexibility to ultimately put our data in at any periodicity we want. So we could have payments made in absolutely any time period, but in this case, I'm going to choose our monthly option and allow myself to use some of the features that puts the asset in on a monthly basis. I'm going to make it a machine in my asset classes, so double clicked on that, it brought back an option, much as it's going to do now with our lease currencies. It brings back the list of the currencies in this instance that we have allowed our system to enable input for. So I'm going to have a lease in US dollars here. So I've taken out a lease in US dollars for this new piece of machinery. And I'm now going to allocate it to a particular entity. And this could be potentially our entity or our entity structure from our inherited from our existing organization. And then it's a euro-based entity taking out the lease in dollars. And we see, as I now move across here, we've got things like intercompany partner. We gather intercompany information. So for instance, if we have a scenario where we have a master lease and subleasing, it will allow us to declare who our partners are within that subleasing scenario, so that we can ultimately provide the information for our intercompany elimination processes later on. We aren't doing the eliminations directly within the lease module, but we're gathering the data, because obviously if you gather the data at source, it means you don't need to worry about trying to solve the problem later. We also have a concept of parent leases. And where we look at our parent leases, we allow ourselves the ability to support complex leases, for instance. So if we've got a complex lease where we need to break down the lease into multiple assets, and potentially using multiple different depreciation rates and different finance rates, we support that with the aggregation into the parent lease, and we declare which the parent is at this stage here. We have a couple of yes/no flags. So is this a sublease or is this not? It's by default we'll say no, it's not a sublease. But if we want to declare that we've actually sublet certain parts of our leases, or had a formal, say, central building lease, and we have formal leases with subsidiaries to sublease floors in that building, for instance, we'd be able to support that flag using this flag here. And similarly, we've got a flag to say, is this an IFRS 16 lease? So if we want to effectively store all of our data for all leases, we can include our short-term leases or low-value leases, and not calculate certain and liability values based on those that we flag as not IFRS 16 leases. So that's our first little bit of information. We see as well, then we get a couple of drop downs for depreciation and discount rates, that it's going to allow us to use either a central or lease-based choice. So if we choose a lease type depreciation rate, it will use the depreciation rate calculated based on the term of the lease. If we use central, it will calculate based on the asset class. Similarly for the discount rate, if we use a centrally defined discount rate, it'll use the rate that's in our table for our corporate discount rates, which is set by entity and by asset class, and we can then subdivide that further by sub-asset classes. For instance, if we want to have variability in, for instance, based on the term of the outstanding term of an asset, for instance. We then have, and we can now see that a number of these things become optional. We can pre-prepare the system, even at this point where we've got master data set up. We can pre-prepare it with our transaction data, our financial data. So we might put in our lease payments at this point if we've got that information, our indexation amounts and how we apply that indexation, whether it's annual, biannual, monthly, etc. So we've got some options in a number of fields here that we can pre-populate our information with, but we'll not do that because it will allow ourselves to look at the input schedule shortly, where we would use that potentially as an end user tool to sort that data a little later on. We do allow ourselves additional properties, so we have a number of additional properties where we can simply store some information for reporting, and we see those properties which are custom to your solution. So we've got some example descriptions in here for cost centers, license numbers for car number plates, for instance, etc. And placeholders there for a number of additional ones. And we've got a final field here for lease document. The lease document description here is actually designed to support a URL. So where we have the ability to link to either a lease management system, to a database of lease documentation via a URL query, we can provide that URL link to the documents here, and therefore once we're in the lease and looking at the reporting of the lease, we can actually access all of that information again at that later stage. So scrolling back across to the start point in this schedule, we've created a new lease information now. We click our add new lease option, just function there, and having done that, we refresh our metadata, and what we then end up with is the system goes away and creates me the new lease in the master data. It submits some transactional data, and then it provides that lease information back to me for use once that's finished refreshing on my review and commentary tab, where we can start to see that information that we've recently entered, with an additional bit of information there for the lease creation date. So we are storing that information, which enables us to control our